Well, glad to have you back. But before we move on to other matters, let's take this email from George. He is concerned about the loan request sent to the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari. He says, I think the so-called executive are not really helping the masses as expected. Imagine the president going to borrow the sum of $29.9 billion in a space of 1 year in office. That's the highest loan I've ever heard the executive will borrow in our lifetime. Our president needs to know that the cost and the application of the loan is yet unclear. The general public is not happy with this loan. He needs to be transparent in his administration. Well, that is George for you. Thank you, George, for writing in. We really appreciate it. And you too can also write in. Let's have your take on the loan request. Do you agree with George? Do you think it's a loan Nigeria should take? Well, let's have your views. Do write in through any of the addresses on the screen. Now, up next are some of the activities some committees were involved in the course of the week.
Senate President Bukola Saraki has set up a committee to address the industrial crisis between the federal government and officials of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. The committee would liaise with the Ministry of Finance and the Budget Office to look into the outstanding financial demands of the union. The Senate President set up the committee during a meeting with ASU officials in Abuja. He told members of the union that the Senate is mindful of the long-standing issues between the union and the federal government, but the upper chamber wants a resolution of the problem. ASU is embarking on a one-week warning strike to protest the failure of the federal government to implement terms of the 2009 and 2013 agreements reached with the union.
We appreciate that there are many issues. Some have been long-standing for a long time. Some are still work in progress. And we felt there was a need for this kind of opportunity to share our minds and share our views, be able to see how far apart are we and what is necessary for us in the interest of Nigerians, in general, the entire country, the education system, universities, to see that we do not disrupt their activities, but at the same time try and see whether we can meet the demands on both sides. Our role is just as a facilitator to intervene. I hope that, that I'm sure all that discussions and meetings will go on, but what we're particularly interested in is whatever we can do to avert the strike and bring the two parties back on the table to dialogue.
We want to thank the Senate for coming to this matter. And as we have discussed, our union will work with them and we will do all possible with the approval of our membership to get the matter resolved as soon as possible.
The chairman of the Senate Committee on Housing and Urban Development, Senator Barnabas Gimade, has called on the Central Bank of Nigeria to immediately pay its equity contribution of 1.5 billion naira to the management of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. Speaking in Abuja during the committee's oversight visit to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Senator Gimade says the equity fund will assist the bank in providing affordable housing to Nigerians.
We have seen the Central Bank of Nigeria make donations of billions of naira in this country, and for them to leave a responsibility like equity in a bank that is the foremost secondary mortgage institution in Nigeria, contributing to the welfare of the ordinary people by providing mortgage finance in this country, and leave it unattended over all these years leaves a lot to be desired. And I think CBN should be ashamed of this particular situation and should do something about it as quickly as possible.
The acting managing director of the bank, in his remarks, promised to implement a new business model with a sharp focus on the mass and middle-income markets that will provide affordable houses at 5 million naira and below.
Over the next 2 dry season cycles, our plan is to, in phase 1, ensure the completion of 24 estates This will also lead to the injection of about 5,000 housing units in the nation's housing stock, and another 38 estates that will result in the injection of about 10,000 houses in the nation's housing stock. And then the last phase will be the completion of 14 housing estates that will also bring in about 2,700 housing in the nation's housing stock.
Members of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Insurance, probing ministries, departments and agencies on insurance transactions in the last 3 years, continued their investigations this week. The Acting Director General of Bureau for Public Enterprises, BPE, was among those that appeared before the committee. The Director General answered questions bordering on the insurance cover of his agency.
I know that being that you came in February, and as you said, that there's some information that you've not officially have not been briefed. And if anyone so that means that when we wrote those letters, someone in BPE sat down somewhere and just typed whatever he feels, and forwarded to this house. That this house will not take lightly. It's unacceptable. It's not an omission. It is deliberate. And sir, I would suggest that you step down at this point in time to provide this other committee with the relevant information we need, rather than we open every page and then you apologize or try to make excuses for omissions or made by, which I know it was not made by you, but your subordinates. But if that document was signed by you, you signed it, I would have wanted to believe that you will have taken your time to go through it. But because you just came, of course, you still, like you said, concerning the EFCC investigation, you might officially not have that information available to you. So I would suggest, sir, if that is carried by my colleagues, that you step down at this point in time to avail this other committee with the relevant information and make the corrections herein. And please, any document you are providing to us next should include all the necessary details required. Sir, no matter how small that transaction is, sir.
Earlier, the committee had stepped down the presentations of the National Broadcasting Corporation, NBC, FHA, Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, for improper representation. The committee is also insisting that the Customs Comptroller General, Colonel Hamid Ali, retired, must appear in person next week. Meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission says despite the financial difficulties facing the country, the Commission is vigorously pursuing its capital market mandate. The Director General of the Commission, Munir Gwazo, said this in the National Assembly after an interactive session with the House of Representatives Committee on Capital Markets and Institutions. The Director General said even with the limited resources at its disposal, the Commission has worked to ensure investors' protection and capital markets development.
We have also vigorously been pursuing our capital market mandate, which is investor protections and capital market of development. And you need resources to do that. So even within that limited resources, we've been able to do that. I'm sure most of you have followed most of our initiative from last year to this year with respect to electronic dividend, dematerialization. We set up the National Investor Protection Fund, and so far we have paid over 3,000 beneficiaries. We launched the Corporate Governance Scorecard. We have set up committees to review all the laws in Nigeria, and they all cost money. So yes, we in every institution, every government institution, 70% or more goes to personnel costs. But we have, judiciously utilized the balance in terms of our initiatives. Yes, we are going through difficult times because the market is not where we expected to be. But it's a reflection of the state of the economy. It's a reflection, of the state of the world economy. It's not only in Nigeria. If you look at other countries too, they are going through difficult times. And the only unfortunate thing is the major regulator of the capital market, which is SEC, relies heavily on what the market is able to make.
Well, that is how it has been this week. We do hope that here on the Gavel, you have a better understanding of what your representatives are up to on your behalf in the National Assembly. I'm Lanre Lasese. See you next week.